The most prestigious watch brand, Rolex, holds a fascinating history of greatness and entrepreneurial spirit. It was the year 1893 in Germany, when Hans Wilsdorf, the creator of the prestigious Swiss watch brand, became an orphan. He was the second son of a family of 3 siblings. His mother died, and months later, his father followed suit. After the passing of his father, the fate of young Hans was in the hands of his uncles, who would take care of him. But soon, he was sent to a boarding school. This child had a sad and solitary childhood, completely removed from his family. Thanks to the savings his father had inherited, his uncles partially supported his education at the boarding school, although this boy had been alone since he was very young. Hans, with an unfortunate childhood, excelled greatly in his academic education. At the end of his studies, and while still very young, he would find work at a watch factory in Switzerland. After working for a few years, he would embark on a new journey to London, England, where at the age of 24, he would start his own watch business. This small venture would give rise to the most prestigious jewelry brand, Rolex, valued at over $2 billion. How did this unfortunate boy create such a prestigious empire? Stay tuned to the end of this video and learn his story. Hans Wilsdorf, the man who founded the most prestigious watch and jewelry brand, has his genesis in a tragic beginning. It was the year 1893, a time when Germany was ruled by a hostile empire, allocating a significant portion of its resources to conquer other territories. At that time, a boy named Hans became an orphan. His mother and father had passed away when he was 12 years old. This boy lived a solitary childhood, promptly sent to a boarding school by his uncles, who covered the expenses with his parents' savings. This boy would excel in his academic education as an outstanding student. Upon completing his studies, he began as an apprentice in a Swiss jewelry company, which he left shortly thereafter to work for Kuno Korten, a renowned watch manufacturing and distribution company. At that time, it was one of the most prestigious watch companies, known for being the largest watch exporter worldwide. Thanks to his academic background, Hans learned a second language, English, and worked in this factory as a correspondent and translator. Through this job, he was able to refine his language skills and develop an interest in the business of marketing and manufacturing these watches. He also honed negotiation skills and marketed prestigious jewelry. During that time, wristwatches were not commonly worn by men as they are now, they were primarily worn by women. Men preferred elegant pocket watches, a market he would never sell to for years during his time as an employee for Kuno Korten. Thus, the young Hans Wilsdorf traveled by train to various European cities, promoting high-quality watch products to influential stores. He was responsible for quality control, winding, and setting thousands of watches in motion. As a correspondent, he carried an elegant leather briefcase, containing dozens of the finest watches of the time. He dressed elegantly, embodying the image of these prestigious watches. At the same time, this sales agent interacted with businessmen and made contacts. One of them was Hermann Eglier, the owner of a Swiss watch workshop, who would play a key role in the history of Rolex. Throughout his life, this young man maintained frugal habits. His salary was 80 Swiss francs per month, a decent amount for a 24-year-old. Hans saved for a little over 4 years, accumulating the majority of his earnings. Over these 4 years, Hans mastered the operation of watch mechanisms and the manufacturing of components. In 1905, at the age of 24, he decided to start his own business. He chose the city of London, England, as the location for his own watch branch, as the city was home to a thriving upper class capable of acquiring prestigious watches. He invested his savings, partnering with his brother-in-law Alfred Davis, and together they founded the company, Wilsdorf and Davis. They imported watches to England, which his friend German Negro assembled in his Swiss factory before selling them in England. By that time, young Hans already had a prosperous business, but he wasn't content with just that. He knew very well that a watch was more than a personal accessory, it was an item that bestowed status and prestige upon a man. And now, Mr. Hans wanted to elevate this accessory to the highest level. For this, he needed to create his own brand and devise a name that was easy to pronounce, recognizable in any language, and a strong visual identity. He began combining letters in every possible way, generating a multitude of names, yet none seemed right. The origin of the name Rolex remains a mystery. There are different versions, even Hans himself claimed that it had come from a dream. In the end, for his purpose, this word emerged. Thus, on July 2, 1908, at the age of 27, Hans registered the brand Rolex. It was no longer just a sales branch, now Hans was manufacturing his own watches. During those times, wristwatches were not highly valued due to their perceived delicacy and subtlety, and they were more directed toward women. Pocket watches symbolized strength and durability. They were more resilient and were considered heirloom pieces that would be passed down through generations. Pocket watches were classified as jewelry and held prestige within families, signifying power and leadership when passed down. Hans began crafting a wristwatch, persisting in the durability and elegance of its mechanisms. Against all odds, Hans Wilsdorf bet on a product that, at the time, didn't enjoy widespread approval. He produced his first wristwatch, and 2 years later, in 1910, he received the first certificate from the Office for Control of the Precision of Watches in Vienna. They were pioneers in history to receive a certificate for an official Swiss chronometer wristwatch. This achievement brought prestige to the brand and, with this different ideology, aided in the acceptance of wristwatches among gentlemen. By 1919, Rolex relocated to Geneva, a famous Swiss city renowned for its watchmaking. In the same year, at the age of 38, Hans was a recognized entrepreneur. By 1929, he created the first hermetically sealed watch. In 1931, Rolex invented and patented the perpetual rotor, the world's first automatic winding mechanism, which remains at the heart of all modern automatic watches. By that time, Rolex watches were already being worn by presidents and renowned figures around the world, adding further prestige to the brand. 2 years later, in 1953, Rolex reached the summit of Mount Everest. The first successful mission to conquer Everest was equipped with Rolex Oyster watches, and Rolex sponsored the first successful expedition to the top of Everest by Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, the first people to reach the summit and return alive. Rolex continued to subject its watches to extreme tests, including exposing them to magnetic fields in the 1950s at the European Organization for Nuclear Research, with successful results. Finally, the founder, Hans Wilsdorf, passed away in 1960 at the age of 79 in Geneva, Switzerland. Rolex continues to employ the same marketing strategies, being present at prestigious events, sponsoring cultural and sporting events, and symbolizing leadership and greatness in individuals. Rolex currently generates annual sales of over $5 billion and has been consecutively awarded as the most prestigious company in the world. Now, owning a Rolex has become a long-term investment, as there is a second-hand market for these classic items, and their value has increased over time. Thanks for getting here. I hope you liked the video. If so, don't forget to subscribe and leave your like. This was featured by Chronicles of Greatness. Until next time.